Now, why did the Persians lose to the Greeks? Herodotus has described very well in his book the resources that the Persians had. They came with like close to 2 million men. They then in Europe they collected another like 3 million from allies. They had over 5,000 men. Meanwhile, the Greeks together would put a number that would not even come to have a million. They had so many ships. um, they had everything they needed to win the war. They had one king who gave commands. The Greeks were so dysfunctional because they were doing things in a way that because there was no one person who was truly in charge. Because these are allies, different city states who've come together. They were fighting their internal struggles about power and everything. So just a simple look at the resources and the organization, it seems like it would have been so easy for the Persians to conquer the Greeks. But why did they lose though? I'm going to give you around 6 reasons why that become very clear when you look you read the book Herodotus. Now, after the Persians and the Greeks had fought at Artemisia, and the Greeks realized or felt the heat and they had to escape. Now they escaped to Salamis. Salamis was an island, I think, that was close to Athens. And remember, Athens was the primary target of the Persians when they came to Europe. They were coming to punish Athens. And the reason they were coming to punish Athens is because at one time Athens had gone to Asia, where the place we know today is Turkey, and burned down a city that used to be known as Sardis. And Sardis was the headquarter of the Persian Empire in the West. The Persian, and this was going to be a punishment, and this is a punishment that Darius, the father of Xerxes, wanted to mete out. He wanted to punish the Athenians, but he died before he could do that. And when his son Xerxes became the king, he decided he was going to punish Athens, even though initially he didn't want to, but he was forced by people like Mardonius. Mardonius was his cousin, if I'm not wrong. And people like Mardonius forced him and told him, you need to do what your father intended to do, and that's go to Athens and punish them for what they did. And so after when the Greeks retreated to Salamis, the Persians followed them, and Salamis was close to Athens. And Athenians realized that even though all the other Greeks were nearby, it was not possible for them to protect them from the Persians. And so they moved out of the city. They deserted the city. Most of them left the city, Athens. And indeed, the Persians also just came and conquered Athens, and they destroyed a lot of things there. And in fact, Xerxes was very happy. He had achieved his goal. He sent messages to Persia, and people celebrated that at least the Persians have achieved what they had gone to Europe to achieve, and that's punish Athens. But the celebration was short-lived, because it was shortly after that that the battle at Salamis happened. But the battle at Salamis was likely not to happen, because when the Greeks saw that the Persians had conquered Athens, they became so scared. And in fact, they decided that they were going to leave Salamis, all of them, and move to a different place. And but there was somebody who saw that as a big mistake. And this is a guy who named as Sipsilas. It's a difficult name. He was an Athenian, and he saw it as a mistake that they should escape. And he went to Themistocles, who was like a general, one of the major generals of the Greek allies. And he told him, this is the message he told me: if these men sail away from Salamis, you will have no fight at all for the one fatherland. For they will all scatter themselves to their own homes, and neither Eurybiades nor anyone else will be able to hinder them. So Eurybiades was like the topmost general, nor stop the breaking up of the armament. Thus will Greece be brought to ruin through evil counsels. But you haste now, and if there be any possible way, seek to unsettle these resolves. Try to persuade Eurybiades to change his mind and continue here. So he came to Themistocles and told him, I don't think it's a good idea. And at this point, everybody is getting into the ships. They are planning to escape, all of them, from Salamis. Everybody is getting into the ships, and this guy is like, I don't think this is it's a good idea, because we retreat, we run away. From this point, this alliance is going to disintegrate. And once it disintegrates, now we are weaker, and the Persians will be so easily able to conquer us. Then Themistocles goes and calls for a war council, and to bring everybody, every general, together and have a conversation about this opinion. And he tells them this, and Herodotus tells us that he tells them as if it was his own idea, like he doesn't mention that this was something that somebody else told me. And they listen to him, and it seems like they are not persuaded. They are like not so sure. They are like, maybe it's the best idea is for us to escape. We might not have the capacity to face the Persians. And in fact, while they stopped from like moving, it wasn't like it was taking time for them to pack and everything. Themistocles did something. He himself became a lot more fearful when he saw that these other guys were not buying his suggestion, and he sent a secret message to Xerxes. Yeah, he was willing to desert the Greeks and move to the Persians. He sent a message, a secret message to Xerxes, but it never reached to the point where he had to desert, because there's another guy who came, Aristides, and he had some information that even if they decided to escape, the route that they wanted to take, the Persians had already covered that place. So there was no way out for them. And in fact, not long after, one ship deserted from the Persians. There were Greeks who had been fighting alongside the Persians. They came to this other side, and they brought a lot of intelligence. And this gave confidence to the Greeks allies, because now they had concrete information about what the Persians were doing, and they were ready to face them. So the battle happened. Initially, they were not confident, but when the battle started at the sea, they realized that the Persians were so disorganized. In fact, their ships were destroying one another. They were colliding themselves, and they did a lot of damage to themselves. In fact, much of the damage happens to the Persian ships was not done by the Greeks. It was done by themselves because of their disorganization. And then something else that happened is that the Greeks, whenever their ship was sunk, the Greeks knew how to swim. The Persians did not know how to swim. Herodotus tells us that most of the people who died, soldiers who died at that battle, they died through drowning. They died because they could not swim. The Persians. The Greeks just swim to the land, and most of them did not die through drowning. And at the end of the battle, the Persians had lost, and they had to escape, but they went back to their camp. And Xerxes at that point realized this is a lost war, but he was not willing to say it to the people around him. He continued behaving like they were preparing for another attack, but meanwhile he was preparing to run away. And in the end of it, he escaped. And the reason he escaped is he realized that once they've lost the sea fight, then they cannot transport goods. Then the Greeks will dominate them, even though the Persians had a lot of soldiers. The Greeks will dominate them because now the Persians will not be able to make transportation and things like that. And also the Greeks will easily move and run to what they call the Hellespont, which is the bridge, the water that divided Europe and Asia. And there was a bridge that Xerxes had set up there, and they knew if the Greeks rush there, because now if they have control of the sea, they can easily move there and dismantle that bridge, and then Xerxes is stuck in Europe. So, and he feared that the Ionians might give the Greeks that information. And here is something interesting. In a video I did not long ago, I mentioned how the Greeks played some propaganda so that they could get the Ionians to desert the Persians. And how they did it is that they wrote messages on rocks telling the Persians, they're telling the Ionians, oh, you people should desert. If you can't do that, when we come to fight, you do things that sabotages the Persians. And it seems like this message stuck with Xerxes, because even not only Xerxes, because it seems like that propaganda worked, because at some point some Phoenicians came and accused accused the Ionians of working against them. And Xerxes knew about this, but did not want to act like he knew what was going on. So he decided he was going to run away. Now, let me come to my 6 points why Persians lost to the Greeks. Number one is unfavorable weather. When the Persians moved to Europe, the first thing that happened to them, there was a huge storm that destroyed so many of their ships. That set them back. Like, without that, maybe the Greeks would not have succeeded. And there was also a time when they were fighting at Artemisia. There was at night a lot of thunder, and that scared them. They were not comfortable with that. There was also a time when they went to the temple of Delphi. They were trying to conquer that place. It was a place that was so sacred to the Greeks. And as they were trying to reach that place, there was, I think, what do you call land? What do you call it? Like there was a flow of soil and mud, landslide. I think that's what it's called, landslide, and killed so many of the Persians. It was raining, thunder, and then there was this landslide. Is it called landslide? I think, and killed so many of them. So weather kind of worked against them. Number two is the training. The Greeks seem to have been well trained, especially the sea fleets. The people who were fighting in sea, they were well trained, and they knew also how to swim, and the Persians didn't know how to swim. So that also worked against the Persians. And as I've mentioned, the Persians understood that regardless of them having a huge land army, if they lost the sea control, then that will be a problem. That land force would be useless, basically. Lack of supplies and resources. Xerxes had a huge army, 5 million people. They need a lot of food to eat, and there wasn't enough sources of food to sustain such a big army. In fact, Herodotus tells us that at the point where they were retreating, the Persians were retreating, they didn't have anything to eat. They were eating grass, leaves, roots. That the place they were going through, the land became bare because they ate anything. Any green thing they saw, they ate. Any animal, they ate. The rivers will dry up because of the amount of people, the number of people who were moving with Xerxes. So resources became a problem. Paranoia over the breach at the Hellespont. And this is interesting because even Xerxes' father, Darius the Great, the reason he escaped from Europe when he went to punish the tribe of Syrian is because he was so paranoid about that bridge. Because it seems like they understood if somebody takes over that bridge, then you are doomed as an outsider. Number 5 was unreliable Greek allies. So Xerxes had a lot of Greeks who worked for him, and but he didn't come to trust them because the other Greeks were playing propaganda. And at some point, there were many that would desert the Persian side and move back to the other Greeks, and then they will take a lot of information to them. That happened so many times. And there was also this issue of the Ionians who had been, maybe the Ionians did not intend to betray Xerxes, but the other Greeks had played the propaganda such that they had passed these messages around, and the Persians had come across these messages that told the Ionians, even if you are unable to desert and come to our side, when we come to the battle with the Persians, you people sabotage the side you are fighting with. So that made Xerxes and his army, the Persians, very uneasy. So that played into making them not succeed. And then, of course, there was the Greeks fearing losing their liberty. Remember, the Greeks were they lived in democratic societies where power was controlled. But the Persians were coming from society where one person had all the power and they would do anything they wanted. The Greeks were not ready to fall under such a rule where it was just one man deciding what happens to everybody. They wanted to retain their systems where the people had a say, and power, even the person in power, was under some control from the people. Now, yeah, so those are the 6 reasons that becomes clear as I read the book histories as to why Xerxes lost the war to the Greeks. Now, yeah, so that's that.